Welcome. I'm Whitney Legate. I oversee our Wi-Fi Professional Development Committee and sit on our board. And I am joined by the wonderful Amanda Schneider today for our Power Hour. We're so excited. We've also got Andrea Blackburn helping us out, who also sits on our Wi-Fi board. So welcome. If you're new, we're so glad you're here. If you are a returning member, welcome back. We're going to jump right into it today. We know everyone's schedule's busy and we want to get to Amanda's work
to do
and more about
he
her
is
book.
offering to do the part where in the middle, like when we're not doing the auction.
We're going to mute. There we go. Thank you. We got it. We'll jump right in here. But again, welcome back to the Power Hour. Today is designing work for what's next. Very excited to introduce you to our speaker today. Really quickly, just a couple Wi-Fi highlights. If you're new to Women in Flooring, we've got a very simple mission. You can see it here. It's really to attract, educate, and empower women in the flooring industry, and we appreciate all of those who support it. We have some wonderful corporate friends. Thank you to all of those who help us continue to do this. Everyone does this free of their time as a volunteer project. So if you'd like to get involved more, either through time or donation, you're welcome to reach out to myself or Andrea, and we can connect you with the right people. Special thanks to our board of directors from all over the industry. Everybody does a lot to keep this going. Wanted to highlight a couple things coming your way. We have a scholarship program. Hopefully you've heard of it. We've got quite a few recipients this year. Thrilled to be able to support women in our industry, continue their education, and learn new things. We are doing a special mini round of scholarships that is opening September the 30th. And the best way for us to get people is for you to share this with your colleagues and friends. So check it out on social. You can check it in womeninflooring.org. But definitely open this up come September 30th and share with your friends. We're going to do another round. We've got another couple virtual programs coming your way as well. We've got a book club coming up in the fall if you've joined us for that before. Our next mentor program will be closing out just in a few months, and we'll open our next one in Q1 of 2027. So for those of you who have participated or would like to, we'd love to see you in early 2027. And then we're really excited to announce we've done it before. We've done the SEAL Leadership Program. We just closed out, we sold out our latest session that we're kicking off. I think you said it was just the other day, Andrea, you guys got going. So we've got more than 30 people in that session. So hopefully that's some of you, but fantastic program. If you'd like to learn more about that, we may have another session later this year or next year, but we'd love to have you. A couple other things. We love to see you all in person when we can. So we try to do some in-person events. Mark these on your calendar. We've got, if you're going to NAFCD in Dallas or Synergy Convention in Chattanooga. And then we've also got some of our 2027 events already on the calendar as well, including TICE coverings and the NWFA Expo. So these are also online at womeninflooring.org right down here, or you can scan to get connected. That's the best way to stay up on what's going on, see old recordings, get more information, and then also follow us on LinkedIn and social. A few other power hours coming up later this summer as summer is barreling past us. I can't believe we're almost to August, but we've got books that move you as we go back to school. We thought that would be a fun one. We've got a couple speakers who are sharing with us some books that have been influential to them in their personal and professional life. And it's really just a little entree into the book to see if it might be something that's interesting for you to read. So check that out if you want to get reading after you read Amanda's book, of course. And then we've got the multiplier mindset with Nicole Harding, and I'm really excited about this one. This is a really interesting concept. It's kind of about shifting your focus, how to really make the most of your interactions and yourself. So check that one out. Really good lineup coming. We'd love for you to register and join us when you can. But really, while we're all here today, I want to introduce Amanda Schneider. She's on with us. Amanda is founder and president of ThinkLab. Many of you in our industry, I'm sure, have heard of that. They're really the only research entity that is focused exclusively on the built environment. So that's very unique. A lot of people kind of roll it all into a lot of other stuff. And Amanda's focus really is on the interior design industry and the built environment. So we're excited to hear what she has say today. She has been in multiple publications, including Forbes and Interior Design, Metropolis, and lots more. She's also a TED.com speaker, and she hosts, as you will see on her very cool hat, Design Nerds Anonymous. There you go, which is a podcast that's in the 1%. So congratulations on that, Amanda. That's quite the feat. But she is also now the latest author of a new best-selling book, Work for What's Next. And that's what she's here to talk with us about today. So Amanda, I'll turn it to you.
Wonderful. So I'm going to steal screen share her. Can you see my screen?
Yep, we gotcha.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to join you. And today we're going to be talking about designing work for what's next. And what's so great about this information that's now in a book is that it all started really right here foundationally in this industry. So we're going to be doing a quick overview to hopefully get you engaged and interested and wanting to actually read the book. But I think what's exciting about this is there's lots of really tools and ideas specific to this industry. If you're a seller in this industry, there's so many clues for you. Maybe you're looking at it for really enhancing your own business and how to recruit and retain and get your own business and work ready for the future. Or maybe you're looking for some fodder and some tools to really talk to your clients about the future of work and some of the things that our industry thinks about and talks about all the time. But as I discovered in doing this TED Talk and writing some of these articles that Whitney talked about that are really going outside of this industry into the rest of the world, this industry has been thinking about a lot of these things for a long time. And I think that the rest of the world is very hungry for this right now. So I want to start with a little game. Whitney is going to be starting a little poll here. I can always tell who has kids by who's played this game. Would you rather? So would you rather is a game of choices. And the choice that you have today is, would you rather go back to the way things were 10 years ago? You can think about this in context of the industry, what selling looked like, or would you rather jump ahead to the way things will be 10 years from now? We know a lot is changing. The pace has really changed a lot. So we'll give you just a minute to pick, and we do make you pick one or the other. No middle of the road here. We need some like Jeopardy music or something here. All right, we can see the racehorses coming in to see where people are. And while we're waiting for these results to come in, I would say go ahead and start in the chat. You know, whether you chose go back or jump ahead, why did you choose that? You can put it in the chat to say why. So I see we've got a few in there already. Sheila says that she's guessing the people that choose 10 years ago now are the people with kids. I think what I was saying is the people with kids are the ones that have played this. Would you rather? Okay, Wendy wants to jump ahead because she plans to be retired. Chanel, why do we want to jump ahead? And Nicole, why ahead? Go ahead and put why in the comments here.
That's a good one.
Okay, Nicole says 10 years ago she had no work-life balance, and now that she's learned, it's become a better piece of her culture. So a really good note there. So Andrea wants to go to the future because she believes that busy work will be automated. Sheila wants to go back because technology is moving too fast. She has young kids and she's worried. I think you're not alone. I have 3 boys, one of whom is looking at colleges right now. And I think as AI takes hold, just wondering by the time he graduates, what will that world look like? I have that same trepidation. Brooke, I think, is jumping ahead. She says it's a good time now, but it's going to get even better. So love the optimism, Brooke. Okay. Erin is getting wiser as she gets older. So can everybody see? Let's go ahead and put the results up here. It looks like 24% of you chose to go back and 76% chose to jump ahead. So the majority of us want to jump ahead. We're excited about what the future holds. But when we look at where things are right now, there's certainly a lot that's changing. So what we're going to be unpacking today is maybe why we should be excited about the future. And for those of you that want to go back, that are a little afraid of where it's headed, I hope to give you a little bit of solace in knowing kind of what is to come and how we can kind of decode and make sure that this is a better future and not just a more complex one. Now, for those of you I've not had the pleasure of meeting before, I am Amanda Schneider, as Whitney introduced, and I run a little organization called ThinkLab. So I am the founder of ThinkLab. We were officially born in 2011. We incorporated in 2015, and I sold the business in 2018 to Sandow. If you're not familiar with that name, Sandow is the parent company to Interior Design Magazine, Metropolis Magazine, Lux, Design Milk, Azure. We just bought Architizer. There's a lot more. It seems every day they're buying more. The same founder, Adam Sandow, actually owns Material Bank, Material Connection, a variety of other brands. My job as the research division is really to leverage their reach within the design industry and kind of that ecosystem that surrounds to really figure out where our collective future as an industry is headed. And we typically work on behalf of product manufacturers to get there. So you can imagine a lot of our focus is really in the design industry. My team also runs the interior design giants of design work. So that's like the Fortune 500, but for interior design firms. We have a lot of different studies that really help if you're focused on the design industry to understand what's here, what's changing, how to stay ahead of that. So I would encourage, if you haven't seen our website, to check out thinklab.design. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, where I share a lot of this information. So obviously I have a strong foundation in this industry, have been working in this industry for a long time. But I will say what's been so exciting to me about these last few years as I've joined Sandow and really started to scale this business is, again, a lot of the things that we have been thinking about as an industry have really taken off. We started doing some research specifically on Gen Z around 2023. At the end of the year, it went viral in a Forbes article that was pinned to the top page of Forbes for about 2 weeks. Then we followed that up with an article in the MIT Sloan Management Review that was the #1 article in July of 2024. And I often say, like, I've been blogging about this stuff for a long time. I didn't suddenly in 2023 become a better writer. I think what happened was really accelerated by the pandemic. The world really woke up to a lot of these ideas and looking at the future of work that our industry has been doing for a long time. So then I did a TEDx talk that got pulled to the TED stage, has a little over 500,000 views. As Whitney mentioned, I have a podcast called Design Nerds Anonymous. We'll talk a little bit more about how you can get involved with that. It is a top 1% overall podcast that is still growing. And we're going to be taking a roadshow, so we'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go. And what we're going to be talking about today is an overview of my brand new book, just launched in May, and actually hit #2 on the USA Today bestsellers list. Lots more to come with this book, but my hope is in the next 30 minutes or so to get you really interested in reading this book. Again, to understand how the concepts here really speak to not only our industry, but probably a lot of the clients that you're talking about. So what's exciting about all of this is, again, the things our industry has been thinking about for a long time, the world is really hungry for, and I think it gives us, anyone who's working in this industry, a really, really good foundation. So let's talk about what makes this book different. I talked about it's really about generations. And I think, I don't know if we have any millennials on the line, but go ahead and identify yourself in the chat if you so choose. I feel like I could start by apologizing to all of you because I think what we did to the millennials with generations was kind of a shame, right? For millennials, we stereotype them. And I will never forget being in a presentation where the keynote speaker was speaking on millennials. And I was sitting next to a friend who's a baby boomer. And the millennial expert was saying, you know, millennials want more money. And this baby boomer next to me was saying, well, I want more money. And then he would say, millennials want work-life balance. And he would say, well, I want work-life balance. So I think what we got wrong about generations is that we stereotyped generations. Our look at generations was a little bit different. We looked at these generations as prototypes. As I get into the information that's in the book, we're going to talk about looking across generations to see how the data is trending, right? So we didn't just ask what Gen Z wants. We're not talking about this in a way that makes baby boomers have to give something up or my generation, Gen X, have to give something up so that the next generation gets what they want. It's really about looking at Gen Z as a fresh set of eyes. Now, the reason we chose to study this is because we thought we would see kind of arrows to our future. If you can picture a bar chart kind of going left to right, we expected things to get a little bit more extreme as we looked across generations. We had seen some indicators of this in earlier studies that we had done at ThinkLab. Again, we're studying it for this industry, so looking at what do these Gen Z specifiers want, because man, it's harder to get in front of them than it ever has been before. So we really hope to see arrows to our future. And in some cases we did, but I won't spoil it. In some cases we absolutely did not. Now, one of the questions that we asked is, what is the hardest part of working in a hybrid world? Again, an interesting thing about how we did this research is we didn't start by looking at what Gen Z wants. We started with business challenges. And if you look at what was happening in 2023, especially with these A&D firms, which is the foundation of where this work started, they were really struggling to kind of reframe an analog industry into this digital speed world, right? And trying to understand when they're only in the office fewer days a week, when we've typically modeled off of an apprenticeship model, how do we keep that culture alive? So we asked this question in our initial survey: what is the hardest part about working in a hybrid world? And I think there's a lot of things that you could probably notice as we look this, maybe that Gen Z, which is at the top, says that nothing hybrid is awesome more than any other. You could probably see that as people get older, they're more concerned with maintaining this culture, right? Which makes sense as you get into leadership. But the thing that's so interesting to me is this yellow one right here. Actually, double the number of Gen Z say the biggest issue is trust as baby boomers. Only 12% of baby boomers say that issue is trust. When it gets to Gen Z, that number is 24%. So actually double that number. And I think this is one of the scariest things that we see, because if we don't have trust, how can we really keep that culture? This includes trust between your coworkers, trust between you and your company. And I would say it extends to even what we look at as trust between a specifier and our product side of the industry, as we've uncovered in our research. The scarier thing is that I think this gap is widening. And I think this is where a lot of people say, I was 19 and every older generation always complains about the younger one. But what's changed today, especially with this trust and this growing trust gap, is that we've never had such discrepancy in how people are experiencing the world. A 19-year-old today just entering the workforce has a totally different experience than I did at 19. And I should also suggest that when we talk about Gen Z, the earliest of Gen Z entered the workforce in 2019. So that was just pre-pandemic. So they never experienced what one of them called in a podcast interview, the before. They've only known this world post the onset of the pandemic. At best, they had less than a year under their belt before they started. So here's what I see and why this gap is widening and why the context that this generation, this youngest generation in our midst is entering is so different. I would say that hybrid work upended the old playbook. This is true whether we're talking about how we work, right? Now that we're in the office, let's say on average 2 to 3 days a week. Or if we're talking about sales, how we sell, we don't have the same face time that we used to. But I would say we're not really sure what to replace it with, right? We don't love this virtual world we were catapulted in during the pandemic. So yet we haven't quite agreed on what the happy medium is, right? Number two, I would say technology is racing ahead, but culture is lagging behind. We've all tried to really embrace tools like this, Teams, Zoom, really engaging with our clients here, but it's truly a lot more difficult than we want it to be. And while some people readily embrace technology, jump into that Slack channel as soon as it's put out there, a lot of people are really reticent, right? Change management with humans happens a little bit slower. Number three, I would say multiple generations are now navigating the same workplace with entirely different mental operating systems. Think about, again, one of your clients, right? And how we communicate differently. People, I would say under 30 naturally operate in a digital first mindset, which those of us over 35, myself included, operate in more of an analog first mindset. You can take this to something as simple as how we grew up, right? When I was growing up, I would go out and see who was at the park, right? Analog first. I would go see who is there. My kids today, they're going to text their friends, see who's around, and kickball still has a pull, but they're going to start digitally. Those natural instincts translate to how we work, Think about how specifiers work today, right? They're going to go and look online first before they ever reach out to a rep, versus maybe someone who's been in this industry and is a little bit more tenure might operate analog first. So that's what we mean when we say entirely different mental operating systems. Number 4, geography is no longer a boundary. Even if you're back in the office 5 days a week, chances are you are now collaborating with other offices like never before. I know, especially in the A&D industry, we are seeing where project teams are formed across different regions. You got a project manager in New York, you got a designer in LA, and you got an architect in Chicago. A lot of these, especially large firms, are transitioning across geographies. And there's changes to our business happening there. We're seeing heavy spec influence out of markets like Chicago and New York. I spoke to a Chicago rep just the other day who was saying about 60% of her specs today are going outside of her market, which is really alarming as you think about how we're typically paid when we work on specs and they do or don't go in or outside of our market. Versus a market like Seattle, where only about 20% of that rep specs were in their market, right? It's really kind of shifting how we think about this. And it's also shifting how we work, right? We're now working across geographies, which forces us into these digital tools like never before. And finally, work is no longer confined to a time or place. I think that, maybe we were excited at first with this virtual work, like, hey, I can work anytime, anywhere, but that quickly kind of faded to, holy crap, I'm working all the time and everywhere. And there is a mental weight associated with that. So kind of fun fact or not fun fact, I don't know if anybody tracks the Gallup Employee Engagement Index, but we saw a fall off in 2020. Understandable, right? We all understand why that fall off would happen in 2020. Big period of change. But what most people don't know is we've actually seen a very equal subsequent fall off for the past 2 years. And this is one of the first times in Gallup's history that they've had multiple back-to-back years of measured decline. And my challenge is this wasn't because of some shock of the pandemic. That's what happened in 2020. But in these recent years, it's really because of all of these rules that we're seeing, all of these shifts, this trust gap that's widening, because we don't want to go back, right? We're trying to go back to the office. We're trying to go back, but we realize that maybe that world wasn't quite what we remembered, yet we don't quite know where to go next. So I think it's not a challenge of if the world has changed, but it's what we do now. And what I want to challenge each of you to think about is there are unspoken norms shaping how we work that were built for a previous era. We cannot operate on analog era norms when the world is moving at digital speed. So if we don't pause to really question what these unwritten norms are and really identify some of them and look again across generations at maybe how they're shifting, we risk reinforcing some of the very problems we're trying to solve. And so that's what this book does. And we're going to kind of walk you through a few of those very briefly today. The premise of the book is we can kind of find clues to our future by looking at the most extreme. I already mentioned Gen Z. One of the reasons we like to look to them is because they never knew this world pre-pandemic. And let me use an in-industry example to make this come to life as we talk about analog first, digital first. So a lot of this is change management. Let's look at something as simple as pricing, right? We used to have physical pricers that were printed things that we looked at that you could kind of flip through almost like a magazine, right? When we went to this digital era, we put those physical pricers online. Maybe you are familiar with this where we even put the sound effects with it, right? You could look at it online and it was like, whoosh, 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 right? That worked because we were working on change management for us older generations. For those of us that thought analog first, it was really helping us transition to this digital era. But these Gen Zers enter this world and this industry and they're like, why the hell would we ever look at a pricer online like that? Like, shouldn't we be able to look for a model number? Shouldn't we be able to search for exactly what we want, right? It wasn't really designed for this digital first, this digital speed world that we're living in, right? So what's happening right now is we're trying to navigate this change management of all of us older generations and simultaneously redesign them for this digital speed world that is optimized for this digital first world that we're all living in. And we can't get new results if we're operating with the same inputs. So this is one of the reasons that we're so fascinated by bringing Gen Z in, because what feels so naturally to them as if they're just the air they breathe is actually new for us and can help us redesign a world that can match this digital speed that we're looking at. Now, this doesn't mean that Gen Z has all the answers and all of us old people, we don't have any ideas, like I'm a Gen X. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's really that we have to get these generations talking and looking at what these differences are so that we can get to a better future for all of us. So there are 10 shifts in the book. There are 10 chapters that talk about shift from this to that really help us identify as we look at the data across generation, how is that mindset shifting? That I think will help accelerate not just taking that pricer and putting it online, but really designing optimally for everyone that's trying to use this digital first world. So let me see how I'm doing on time. Okay. We're going to go through these pretty quick. I've just picked 3 to kind of give you a highlight. This will just give you the sampler platter of what this whole book looks like. But the 3 that I picked is the first one, shift from physical to phygital. And we'll really talk about kind of this future as digital natives. Now, don't worry, we can all emigrate. Just like you can emigrate from one country to another, we can learn their ways. It doesn't change our foundations, but there's possibility to emigrate. So we'll talk about kind of this shift here. The second one we're going to talk about is number 4. I really like the storytelling around kind of loyalty. This loyalty applies whether we're looking at loyalty of employees to your company or also loyalty of employees, or think about your sales interactions, right? Loyalty of your clients to you. That's probably shifted a little bit and might feel a little bit different. And I think it's easy to think that Gen Z is disloyal. We're going to kind of unpack that myth a little bit today. And finally, I'll take you through number 6, from ladders to jungle gym, really the new purpose at work. And I think this one will really help us engage with, how we engage this younger generation, but really what lessons from them can help us all see. So if we're ready, we'll dive in, and I'm going to move pretty quickly. Now, the first shift is this idea from physical to phygital, that the future belongs to these digital natives. Now, this originally came from a woman named Hannah Grady Williams. It's still one of our most popular episodes on Design Nerds Anonymous. But her concept, she has a book called Unlocking Gen Z, really looks at how this really takes shape in our world and in our lives. Gen Z and basically those folks under 30 grew up in this digital first era. They have never known a world where they didn't have everything at their fingertips. I already shared this idea of even my kids and kind of how that takes shape, even how they find their friends. They don't lose that when they get to the workplace, right? So if they're going to find their friends in a Discord channel or on a Minecraft world before they go play kickball, think about that, how that applies when they move into the professional world. This could apply to things like onboarding, right? How do we engage them digitally before they ever have to walk in and show up into an office? It could even apply as your role as a sales rep. And I'll say one of the funniest things, one of the biggest things we hear from Gen Z that they're looking for is, as a sales rep, just put your photo in your email. Because when that Gen Zer walks in to a party, they don't know that you are Nicole P, at blah, blah, blah.com. They only know that email address. They can't connect your face with your email. So if you can kind of make that connection, it's just one example of how to connect these physical and digital worlds. So the idea is, let's get phygital. So as we look at the future, we don't want to think just analog first. And I think a lot of us in this industry think FaceTime is best. That is true. We definitely deepen our relationships most when we have that face-to-face time. But what I hear from a lot of reps is, I can be the rep that I was in 2019, out shaking hands, kissing babies. I can be the rep that I was in 2021, wickedly responsive behind a screen. I can't be both of those. So in addition to accommodating kind of how these younger, newer folks are really seeing our industry and seeing our world, I think we can use this idea of getting phygital, means digital sparks, human, that face-to-face time sticks. How do we really design these experiences to integrate the two? And there's lots and lots of clues from Gen Z. All right, let's move to shift number 4, from old school loyalty to modern commitment. Really this idea that the rules to retain have changed. Now, when I ask groups, what is one complaint that you have or you've heard about Gen Z? One of the most common responses that I get is that they're not loyal. And if you had to guess what the average tenure of a Gen Zer is, what would that be? Just think about a number in your head. Average tenure of a Gen Zer is 2 years, 3 months. And I see a couple of you that are on camera shaking your head here, like, dang it, what's happening here? If you think about that, like a designer, a project can be 3 years. They're not even seeing the end of their project before they're moving on to their next firm. However, if we look across all generations, average tenure, even for a boomer, is 8 years, 3 months. What's changing is access, right? And I will never forget, we have a Gen Z cohort that's a group of Gen Zers that we talk with on a regular basis. We meet with their firms, we understand what their business challenges are, we talk with these Gen Zers. And in one of these sessions, one of the young designers said this quote on the left, so I've been here 4 years, so like a really long time. And everyone just nodded and the conversation kept going. As the only Gen Xer in the room, I was like, wait a minute, 5 years is the new long time? Like, when did we get there, right? It's just kind of accepted thing because of the access that they have. But the point here being that all generations, that loyalty is starting to go down. Now, again, a lot of our research really focused on kind of this contrast between management and, what we're hearing from this younger generation. So from leadership, we heard things like this. We're struggling to find the right people at the right levels to fulfill the needs we currently have. Maybe a challenge for you is really getting in touch with these young specifiers because they don't work the same way. But from Gen Z, we keep hearing about their perception about these antiquated mindsets. Again, think about that aha about the pricer, like we would never have designed it this way. And they're saying, I get a cost of living raise of 2 to 3%. It doesn't make sense when cost of living, when actually inflation is doing what it's doing at the rate it's doing. And I'm getting pinged on LinkedIn every day with 10% raises. They're saying, this is not a lack of loyalty. This is really like, it would not make sense to be loyal. It's a lack of blind loyalty in their eyes. So I think looking at these two dichotomies, we can really look at what do we do about this. And I think our assumption going into this is, again, that recruiting talent is hard and retaining.
Straight up this road about a block and a half. So you'll go one more light and it's, yep.
All right, thank you. So our assumption is recruiting is that maybe these Gen Zers lack loyalty, but really what they said is give me a reason to stay. What they say is we don't lack loyalty, we lack blind loyalty. And I think as we think about that reason to stay, it applies whether we're talking about recruiting and retaining talents for our own business or even looking at retaining our clients and how those interactions happen. There's a lot of clues in the book that can really help us bridge that gap. All right, let's jump ahead to one more that's one of my most fascinating from this, that is From Ladders to Jungle Gym, the new rules of purpose at work. Now, this is a really interesting one, again, as we think about maybe some complaints and some differences with this digital first mindset that we're all living in. And one of the stories I like to tell is that of Wake Forest College. They do this thing in onboarding. They've been tracking of their incoming freshmen. How many of them believe that they're destined for the C-suite? And since they started tracking this in around the 1950s, it's been right around 25% believe that they're destined for the C-suite. Around 2020, can you guess what happened? It skyrocketed. It skyrocketed. Around then, about 2/3 roughly suddenly said that that's me, that I'm destined for the C-suite. And you can imagine as this freshman orientation is happening, all the parents are like rolling their eyes. But then the professor asked this follow-up question. Now, how many of you include your kids on a decision about where you go on vacation every year? So those of you that have cameras on, hands up. Anybody include your kids on those decisions? Okay, a lot of you are raising your hands. Okay, some of you are virtually, thank you, Wendy, raising your hands. And then they asked, okay, but how many of you were included in those decisions? And most of those hands go down, right? So this is a generation that has been raised to think that they have a seat at the table. They're raised with social media and access. We talked about LinkedIn in that last one, like never before. And now they're entering the workforce and all of a sudden they're supposed to wait their turn. It doesn't really fit the way that they've been, raised, the way that they've entered this world, the access that they've had, and they don't understand that. So a lot of people think that it may come across as privileged, but it really has to do with kind of how they fit in here. Now, Gen Z is projected to be the dominant workforce in the next decade. But here is the other thing. Even though they think I should be able to be there, they're not lining up for the corner office. Only about 6% say that leadership is their primary goal. And here's why. They're looking at all of us and they're saying, okay, leadership looks like burnout, divorce. It looks like my dad was loyal to that company for 25 years and they laid him off in his 50s and then he couldn't find a job. So until we rewrite leadership for what it looks like for them, they're struggling with this idea of purpose around work and what that might look like. So I think one of the other interesting things is just this generational shift that's happening. Baby boomers are the largest generation, and they are, by 2030, the majority of them will be eligible to retire. My generation, Gen X, is not big enough to fill their shoes. So that means millennials and Gen Z are going to have to step up sooner. And many of them will even tell you that they're not quite ready. The other thing that I'll say is our definition of good leaders is shifting. So if you look at what's happening in our world right now, this is some research from McCrindle. He was another guest on the Design Nerds Anonymous podcast. You can hear that episode if you go to the feed. But he looks at some data on what good leadership looks like to each generation. Now, to baby boomers, good leaders direct. We've all heard about this idea of the golden rule, treat others the way you want to be treated, right? So look at what's happening in these RTO mandates. Good leaders are directing. In a time of crisis, they're saying, come back to the office. However, if we go through Gen X, good leaders coordinate, millennials, good leaders guide, Gen Z, good leaders empower. So let's pause there for a minute, because good leaders empower, yet they're being directed. It's actually having the opposite effect on them, right? And we're seeing that in them leaving these jobs 2 years, 3 months, right? Like, don't tell me what to do. Don't empower me, right? To them, good leaders empower. And moving on to Gen Alpha, good leaders inspire. So I think the companies that restructure around these values now will be far better positioned to attract and grow the next generation of managers and leaders. And I would also suggest for any of you in a selling role, really understanding some of these differences, that empowerment attitude will really help you connect with this next generation of specifiers as well. So I know all of you just did a book club with Adam Grant. I love his rethinking and unlearning concept. I think in an era that wasn't moving this fast, we could outwork our competitors, right? We could learn more, we could read more, we could do more. But in this era where things are happening fast, one of the things that he talks about that I think was so rich in that book was in this future era, at this pace of change today, what's going to matter more is our ability to rethink and unlearn. And actually, Deb Golden, who wrote the foreword of the book, she leads innovation for Deloitte. She runs a $8 billion business. This is her right here. You can read her foreword in the book. And one of the things she says is, in all her work with all of these leading large companies, the thing that holds them back is rarely a lack of new ideas. What usually holds them back is this idea that they can't let go of the way things have always been done. It's really about not being able to let go to these old norms they once held. So this book is really designed to help you kind of see what some of those norms are, and help us rethink them for a better future. Not just one that takes what we've known in this analog world and puts it literally into the digital one, but one that helps us really redesign a future that maybe is inspired by Gen Z, but benefits all of us. So I know we're getting tight on time, so I'm going to skip our little reflection there and talk about some excitement to come. That if you're interested in all these things that I've talked about, I would certainly encourage you to get a copy of the book. We'll give you a link so you can do that. But I will also announce we are taking Design Nerds Anonymous, my lovely little hat here, on the road. So we will be in hopefully a city near you very soon to come. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you can see some of the cities that we're going to be in. And what's exciting about this is that this conversation is not ending with the launch of the book. It really is beginning. Instead of doing kind of a canned keynote in every city I go to, we're going to be really unpacking some of the concepts from the book with a panel of experts, both from within the industry and beyond, that helps us really say it's not about a keynote standing on stage that knows everything. It's really about kind of bringing a lot of people in to help rewrite and co-create this future as we think about prototyping together. Another little exciting piece of news is we are continuing to expand our reach beyond this industry. So it is not social media public yet, so don't post this anywhere online, but I'll be on the Oprah podcast. It'll be launching August 25th. So very, very exciting. That really is going to expand our industry's influence. And if you read the book, we really talk about, again, how our industry has been thinking about these things for a very, very long time. So be on the lookout for that. And I think it's going to get even more people kind of engaged with the industry and how we think and how we could creatively solve these problems together. So I'm going to leave you with just a few additional ways to kind of stay connected. If you're not already a fan of the Design Nerds Anonymous podcast, we just dropped a new episode yesterday that talks a little bit about some of the topics we're going to be exploring on the roadshow. I would encourage you to listen there. Of course, I'd love for you to read the book. Oprah liked it, so hopefully you will like it too. And you can find out more about the roadshow if you follow me on LinkedIn. So I'm a big LinkedIner. I will always respond to every message that I get. So if you start to read the book, if you listen to a podcast, if this presentation sparked something for you, I would certainly love to hear from you there. So with that, I'm going to pass back to Whitney. I think you're going to close us out.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. This was really interesting. Do we want to open it up for any questions from the group? Are you open to
Sure.
that?
Absolutely.
If anyone wants to go on the chat, or you're welcome to unmute yourself, as long as we don't have a multitude of people, but you're welcome to ask Amanda a question. I mean, I'll give you one while everyone's pondering their chat question. So you've done a lot of research. I've seen your work in multiple places. I have not finished the book, but I am reading it. Who's doing this well? Like, you talk about multi-generations, it's okay. They don't want a directive leader. They want an inspirational leader. But the reality is if I'm a leader, I have all those generations under me, right? So tell me a little bit about what you're seeing and what your work's telling you about how do you take all this and make it work?
And if it was easy to do, everyone would have done it by now. So I think what I would say is, we are a culture that wants the Ozempic, right? Like, I don't give me a diet and exercise. Like, that sounds hard, Amanda. Like, I don't want a diet and exercise plan. I want the Ozempic, and no shade to Ozempic. It's a great product, right? But I think what I would say is, the future is not clear. And anyone who tells you, like, here's this checklist, do these 10 things and you'll have it all figured out, it is full of it, right? Nobody has the answers today. I think what's interesting to me as I look at some of the companies that are figuring this out, one of the examples I talk about in the book is Atlassian. A lot of the companies that are figuring out this future of work are the ones that are getting very, very intentional about it. And as we think about, this remote first world, it does not mean offices don't matter, but it does mean people that aren't necessarily bumping into each other every day in the hallways have to get a lot more deliberate and a lot more intentional about their culture, about what good looks like, about what good communication looks like, especially as some come from a digital native, some come from an analog native. So I think that all of us, whether we're in an office or not, can really learn from a lot of these companies that are pioneering this digital first era. Atlassian is one I would follow. GitHub is another one that I would follow. Again, it doesn't mean that the office no longer becomes important, but it means what we're learning from the intentionality of these truly digital first companies can really apply whether we're working in an office or not.
So we got to put the hard work in. That's what you're telling me.
Sadly, we got to do the diet and exercise plan.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on with us. We know you're very busy. You've got a lot of work with the book. Congratulations, by the way. Fantastic. I know you have put an immense amount of yourself into this. We look forward to seeing you on the roadshow. Highly recommend Design Nerds Anonymous podcast. If you are not a subscribing member, it is a great way to get a peek into not only, if you're not tends to lean a little bit more of the commercial side of the business. It's really interesting to just improve your business acumen on that side. A lot of you ask us for ways to understand this business better. That would be a great way to do it. Amanda talks with a lot of people across the industry, whether that's design or end users, things like that. So I don't see any other questions. Andrew has been kind enough to put some links in the chat for you, including some of our upcoming power hours, scholarship articles, all the things. We do have one question. I can read it to you, Amanda, if you want to read it, but Sandra's got a question for you.
Sandra, I love this question. So Sandra's asking, she says, I believe this generational blender is adversely impacting how we communicate with our customers. Want to consider how to apply this information with our external communication ideas. Yes, we have a lot of ideas. So super interesting as we look at what's happening for sellers today. There are really some major changes that are affecting how we sell in this industry. Our ThinkLab data suggests that the average seller has gone from around 80% of their time face-to-face to today on average, different by industry, around 45% of their time face-to-face. And I think that's a really hard thing to kind of come to grips with, especially as sellers. We love to see one another. We love to be face to face, right? So this is a really tough adjustment to say, I've got less of that time face to face. Things like what used to be a 1 hour presentation is now 15 minutes. Things like the average age of a rep today is around 47. The average age of that first pick specifier is around 26 because we're seeing that 2-part specification process. And here's one that really like shocks people is that the size of the average decision-making committee, specifically for these commercial projects, has actually doubled. Some of that is the Zoom effect. Some of that is inflation. So costs are getting higher. And so it's gone from an average of about 3 people to an average about 6 people. So simply put, you've got less time, you've got double the number of decision makers that are now communicating in different ways. Like it really does mean that the old playbook that we had as sellers is not working anymore. So there are a lot of clues in the book. We do a lot of storytelling in the book about that B2B seller and really what the tangible tactics that we've seen start to work. It's things like getting phygital. How do we use the most of our digital time? How do we use the most of our in-person time and really reprioritize that? And leverage some of these digital touch points maybe differently than we have in the past. Again, like our future of work playbook, there's not a clear true north, but we do have a workshop for brands that helps walk you through. We actually have a workbook specifically for sellers that helps you walk through how do you go from being a good rep to an indispensable rep? How do we communicate without overwhelm? And how do we truly build trust in this phygital era? Because most of us are not naturally born into it, understanding kind of what that looks like. So there's certainly a lot that we can help you with there. So if there's something that we can reach out to you and your team about, I would encourage you to reach out to me on LinkedIn for sure. Okay, another question here from Andrea. Thank you for the question. She says, any stories or tactics of innovative ways, software, meeting schedule, cultural efforts that help creating effective hybrid workplaces? Yes, so many, because the book is full of every single one of these 10 shift chapters has 3 to 5 ideas of tangible tactical things that you can try with your team. So I'll kind of talk about just a few of them here. One of them I would say comes from, and let me, creating effective hybrid workplace. So I'm going to talk about this in terms of your team, not selling. But as we think about hybrid workplaces and your culture within them, one of the things that I would look into is there is a great book. Brian Elliott, Sheila Subramanian were also on the podcast, so you can hear them there. But they wrote a book called How the Future Works. And one of the tools in that book is team level agreements, right? And team level agreements really start to define what good looks like and what expectations are. We talk about these unwritten norms that are kind of from an analog era that are not really stated into the future. You know, now in this hybrid era, we are all taking advantage of flexible work times. And maybe you're a morning worker and you're a night owl. And, you know, when do I have to be available? When is it okay to pick up my kid or go get a manicure in the middle of the day? And when is it not okay? So these team level agreements are just one example of a tool in the book to really help you sit down with your team and decide what good looks like. Because as we talk about those Gallup employee engagement index kind of starting to fall off, I would challenge that a lot of that is this mental load of feeling like you're never enough at work and feeling like you're never enough at home, right? Like you can work anytime, anywhere, but you can also work all the time and everywhere. So to me, if we can offload that mental load of what good looks like, what respect looks like today, because it's not what it was when we were all in an office 8 to 5 and could leave it at the door. Now we're responding different hours. That team level agreement is just one example of a tool that you can really sit down and use with your team. But the book is full of even more.
I think that's
Okay.
all our questions for now.
Yep.
Amanda, thank you for being with us. Thank you to all of you who joined us for the podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Please join us again. And again, womeninflooring.org for all of our events and meetings. And we're glad you were here. Hope you have a great Friday. Thank you, Amanda.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.